So by now you probably are aware of the new ban list, but for those who aren't, let's talk about it. And for those who are, let's discuss it.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hello Cardfighters, welcome back to another video, and today we have to talk about the brand new ban list they revealed this Friday. And yeah, as you can see from probably the title and potentially the thumbnail, it's a bit of a head scratcher. We understand certain things about the ban list, but there are definitely some things that is a bit questionable. But of course, before we can actually discuss about this ban list, let's take a look at this ban list for anybody that isn't aware or that's been living under a rock, so you know what we're actually talking about. So for the new ban list that we're gonna get for the English format of the game, we have a new update to the premium version as well as the V premium version. So for premium, we are going to get something similar to JP, as we're gonna have Odysseus as well as Mystery Flare Dragon being banned. But on top of that, we also see Nazari being restricted and basically banned from the game. And it makes sense because this is essentially the Eugene hand loop deck that just disrupts your opponent's hand size and then you start attacking. And even though this is a bit of a meme to some extent, with the new support on the horizon, as we talked about this on this channel, and even on Top Deck Heroes with their latest V-Time, or in this case probably last week V-Time, they're gonna get more support that can accelerate this card even faster. So they have to address it and just be done with it from the game. Overall, nothing really of something spectacular here, so very understandable. But then we move to V Premium. And for V Premium, we see the banning of Percival as well as Kokoshi Garas. Now, Percival to some extent makes sense because of the whole Gurgrit and Holy Shine Dragon interaction that can just accelerate Excel markers out of nowhere, and that's probably not something that Bushiroad wants to have in their game to the extent that Gold Paladin can do. Sadly, this does mean that the Pure Liberator deck, the Bluish Flame deck, is going to be unplayable at this point because the I think its core really relied on Percival being in the soul to get full power. But who knows, maybe they're going to generate a new type of Percival card that only works with core that can substitute for Percival in the next potential V-Clan collection set. Kokoshi Garasu is basically a card similar to what we just discussed with Nazaru. It's hand disruption, and they probably want to remove that from the game to the extent that some of these cards can do to make the game a bit more fair and fun and healthier to play. But of course, this isn't the only addition to the restriction list for V Premium, because we also have these updates, because Charon is going to get unrestricted for Shadow Paladin, as well as Ellie for Bermuda Triangle, but then Q-Tire is going to be banned outright entirely. Now, the thing how this impacts is essentially Charon was a freeway choice restriction with either Draghard, Luard, Charon, or I believe Nemain, but now with Charon out of the mix, it essentially means Luard's at full power except for Nemain, but with the addition of the new Idiona from the previous V-Clan collection, that deck is probably going to be a solid tier contender. Now, in the Bermuda Triangle sense, this absolutely doesn't change all too much, if I'm going to be very honest, because there was a freeway choice restriction between, I believe, Vert, Ellie, and Q-Tire. But with Q-Tire being completely banned, there's no point of choice restricting Vert with Ellie anymore, because they also outright banned the Grade 2 Prism girl, which meant you're not gonna play Prism anymore anyway, so why keep the choice restriction with Ellie? And any other deck in Bermuda Triangle could play Ellie anyways, so this unrestriction of Ellie doesn't change all too much. It just changes the fact that Highlander just doesn't exist anymore because Q-Tire is gone. Now, those are essentially the restrictions and the bannings we're going to get for the English format. Overall, most things come out as we expected and wanted to see. Mystery Flare Dragon banned, we want to have Odysseus banned, Nazari is a fine extra addition to it, and then in the V-Premium sense, they address some problematic cards like the Gold Paladin interaction. That was something that was problematic for a lot of players, and I agree there's something there that's annoying. Kokoshi Garas, I honestly had no problem with, but probably there's something that I'm overlooking, or maybe some future hindsight that comes into play. But then we get to this second slide and the extra things that we didn't see. Now, in case of the unrestriction of Luard, you might think that is worrisome because now Luard is essentially at full power. Yes, Nemain is still banned for the deck, but Luard was playing without Nemain for a long while and still did basically fine until they restricted Charon as well, which was their countercharge engine. You might think this is going to be problematic because Idiona just got released and that's going to supercharge the deck to some extent. Well, yes, the deck is going to be solid, But the thing is, and now we get to the issues that I have with this list, Steam Maiden got scot-off free. There's no restriction to Steam Maiden in any shape, form, or capacity. Which means we're going to stay in the same format we just saw in the last couple of BCSs, which I also highlighted with, I think, this video, or it should be this video somewhere on here, where I talked about things that needed to be addressed. And some did, some didn't. The premium side did, the V premium side, they didn't. Now, that said, with Luard being back at full power, this could potentially open up the window for a different playstyle. Because Gold's being out of the picture, at least full power Gold, Gurgrid, etc. out of the picture, there are other decks potentially coming on the horizon that could combat Steam Maiden to some extent, because Luard might be a contender, but also Ghosties. We've seen Ghosty doing actually pretty well against Steam Maiden in the Steam Maiden format, and it is actually a deck that has a really good matchup against Steam Maidens because of their superior guarding effects that can circumvent the whole Colossus OTK turn they can generate, or even the numbers they can generate during their multi-attacking. And with Gold Paladin being out of the format, that is more leeway towards Ghosty, because Ghosty does die against Gurgrid or any other aggressive Exile deck, and with one of them being tackled, that opens up the spot for Ghosty to potentially shine. And even though I would much rather have seen Colossus being just banned from the format, I can understand why some players aren't really that concerned about this and making the argument, well, we're just at the new format, and maybe they didn't want to ban the Colossus right now and just want to see things being played out, as the set just came out, it's just a new format, and the players haven't really had the experience to playtest. And that's where I think this could potentially balance itself out with the coming format. Because yes, Steam Maiden has been performing insanely well, but at the same time, two things happened that we need to address as well. One, a lot of players were not expecting Steam Maidens to perform as well as it did. A lot of players got caught off guard about this deck. And the second thing is, most of the top level players were the ones actually playing the deck. And that's where we come into a scenario where now we can potentially see a more healthier format arise from this. Because most of the top level players were expecting Steam Maidens to be one of the best decks, and that's why they playtested, and that's why they brought it to the tournament, and that's why the deck performed insanely well as it did. Now that the worldwide knows about Steam Maidens, everybody and his mom and uncle and grandma are going to play test against Steam Maidens and going to practice and get tax in their decks against Steam Maidens, because they are calculating that's the deck to beat. And then we are going to get in a format where things like Ghosties, maybe Luard, or any other counter deck against Steam Maidens will arise to meet their maker, essentially. So I can see why Bushwood might not want to ban or restrict the deck to some extent, because they probably want to see how the format plays out. If the deck really is problematic, they will probably do something in 3 months' time around December, when the next ban list is due. As now that we have a ban list every 3 months, Bushwood can get away with certain things not hitting because they want to maybe see things being played out. And I'm only accepting this for Steam Maidens in V Premium because it's just a new format that everybody's still trying to figure out. If they didn't ban Mystery Flare Dragon Odysseus, that's where I would have had a problem. Luckily, they did ban the cards in Premium, which is good. But there's one thing that a lot of players have been talking about and voicing their concern of something that wasn't on the ban list for Premium. Narukami. A lot of players have voicing their concern about Narukami having no restriction on this hit list, because either they're saying Stun Verse is a problematic card, and other players are saying Exterminate needs to be banned because it generates an insane OTK turn, especially with the Superior Ride line and the new support. The deck needs to go. I can definitely agree with those sentiments, but at the same time, I will stick by my assumptions and arguments that I made in the previous video. Again, link is somewhere at the top here, about that Narukami overperformed especially well in the previous format because it had such a good matchup against Mystery for Dragon and Tavis, Odysseus, Ripple. With those decks gone, now the format, in my opinion, is broken wide open, and we can essentially not assume who's going to be the best deck. Yes, you can immediately go to Narukami, and I will probably start playtesting with Narukami for Premium, but who's to say that another deck that nobody was trying to playtest because it just instantly lose against Mystery Flare Dragon, Turbo, or Ripples, now takes its spot as the new contender against Narukami, or potentially beat out Narukami out of the format altogether because it just easily can circumvent their game plan altogether. And that's the reason why I don't want to jump the gun on the premium side of the ban list all too fast, because it's too big of a random factor here that things can change altogether. And that's basically everything that I wanted to talk about the ban list. Overall, it's a mixed bag of emotions. In the premium sense, I'm very happy that they finally addressed the two big problems. Maybe I would have liked something to be done with Narukami, but like a small tap on the wrist. But I can see why they didn't want to ban anything or restrict anything, because it's a can of worms they probably don't want to open, because if they then hit Narukami, then people are gonna say, well, why didn't you hit the next best thing after Narukami, and the next best, and the next best, and you go on and on. The obvious issues are Mystery Flare Dragon and Ripple, address that, and we're gonna see further in the next 3 months if there's something else that needs to be done. And in V Premium, that's where I get the real head scratcher, because I honestly, even though like it's a new format, I don't think they would have hurt anything if they just banned Colossus altogether. Like, Steam Maidens is still a good deck without the card. It's more fair, it's more fun probably for a lot of players, but I can see the argument to be made that they probably want to see the format play out a bit, because I can understand that the community will probably have a knee-jerk reaction to one deck popping off in 3 different tournaments in 2 weeks time, and then want to ban it immediately. While in the grand scope of things, maybe that's a bit too hasty. Like, usually cards need to be banned or hit if they like dominate a format like for weeks and weeks and months on end, unless something is very problematic out of the get-go, like something like Mystery Flare Dragon and Odysseus, for example. Like, these cards haven't been running around all too much, or at least dominating a lot of tournaments all too much, but the moment they stack out their ugly hats, they had to be dealt with immediately. Steam Maidens, maybe not as much, but if it's still going to be as oppressive as it is that we've seen so far, I definitely would campaign for banning Colossus at the bare minimum. But with that said, that's basically everything I want to talk about the ban list today. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of this new ban list. Do you think this is completely fine? Are you excited about the disappearance of certain decks in Premium or V Premium? Are you excited about the potential prospect of Luard returning in V Premium? Because, hey, there are definitely Luard fanboys out there that are probably very ecstatic about being able to play your deck at full power to some extent. So I definitely want to know your opinions about this, and if you think Luard has a fighting chance against Steam Maiden and whoever other deck is gonna emerge from this new format. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!